You know, right this second, as you're sitting there, millions of cells inside your body are dividing. It's one of the most basic, fundamental processes of life. But it's not just one simple split. It's really a tale of two very different and pretty incredible processes, mitosis and meiosis. So let's dive in and break down how they both work. I mean, just think about that for a second. Every single one of us, you, me, everyone, started out as just one single cell, a fertilized egg. So how on earth did that one tiny cell become the trillions of specialized cells that make up your body today? Well, the answer is pretty obvious, right? Those cells had to divide, and then divide some more.
So, why all this constant division? What's the point? It's actually pretty simple. Our bodies are basically in a never-ending state of construction and maintenance. We need brand new cells for growth, to get from that one cell to a whole complex person. And we also need them to constantly replace old, worn out, or damaged cells. It's like the ultimate biological renovation project that just never stops.
Okay, so before any cell can even think about dividing, it has to do something absolutely crucial. It has to perfectly copy its entire genetic blueprint. All our DNA is neatly organized into these things called homologous pairs of chromosomes. You get one from each parent. When it's time to copy them, you get these classic X shapes, which we call sister chromatids. They are perfect, identical copies, stuck together, all ready to be handed out to the new cells.
Now, before we go any further, there are two key terms we absolutely have to get straight, or none of this will make sense. First is diploid, which we call 2N. A diploid cell has two full sets of chromosomes. That's most of the cells in your body. Then there's haploid, or N, which has only one set. Just keep those two in your back pocket, because the whole difference between diploid and haploid is totally central to this story.
All right, let's kick things off with mitosis. The absolute best way to think about mitosis is to imagine it's the body's master photocopier. Seriously. Its one and only job is to create perfect, identical clones of cells, right down to the very last letter of their genetic code.
This is the process your body is using all of the time for just everyday growth and repair. When you get a cut and it heals, or just for you to grow bigger, that is mitosis at work in your somatic, or non-reproductive cells. The goal is always the same. Make an exact clone of the parent cell to keep everything genetically consistent.
So, mitosis happens in 4 clear stages, and you can remember them easily with the acronym PMAT. It's like a little dance. First, in prophase, the DNA coils up super tight. Then in metaphase, all the chromosomes line up right in the middle at the cell's equator. Next up is anaphase, where those identical sister chromatids get yanked apart to opposite sides. And finally, in telophase, 2 brand new nuclei form, each one grabbing a complete set of chromosomes.
So what's the end result of all this? Well, one parent cell divides just one time to produce 2 daughter cells. And here's the key. They are both diploid, and they are genetically identical to the original cell. Perfect copies every single time. All right, now let's switch gears and look at a completely different process. If mitosis is the body's photocopier, then meiosis is its creative shuffler. Its whole purpose isn't to make clones at all, but to generate all the genetic variety we need for sexual reproduction. It does this by creating sperm and egg cells, which are also called gametes. Meiosis only happens in very specific cells, the germ cells inside the sex organs. And unlike mitosis, its goal is all about creating variation. It takes a diploid cell, and through 2 whole rounds of division, it churns out cells that are genetically unique. This is what ensures that kids are different from their parents and from their siblings.
Now, the secret sauce to all this genetic shuffling is this amazing event called crossing over. During that first meiotic division, the homologous chromosomes, remember, one from each parent, they pair up and they literally swap segments of DNA. This process creates brand new combinations of genes that have never ever existed before. It's incredible.
And believe me, this whole process of crossing over is unbelievably intricate. In fact, that first phase of meiosis is so complex it actually has its own 5 substages. They're all there just to make sure this genetic shuffling happens perfectly before the cell even thinks about dividing.
So after 2 full rounds of division, what do we end up with? We get 4 daughter cells, not 2. And here's the really critical part. Each one is haploid, meaning it has only half the number of chromosomes. Plus, thanks to all that crossing over, every single one of them is genetically unique. Okay, we've met our two contenders. We have the copier and we have the shuffler. So now it's time to put them side by side and really get into the critical differences. Welcome to the showdown of cell division.
This is the question, right? This gets to the heart of everything. If you really want to understand the engine of life, you've got to be able to answer this. So let's focus on the biggest takeaways. This table just lays it all out perfectly. First, look at the purpose, growth and repair versus making babies. That one fundamental difference really drives everything else. Because meiosis has to create variety, it needs 2 rounds of division and that super important step of crossing over. That's what gives you 4 unique haploid cells, which is totally different from the 2 identical diploid cells that mitosis makes for simple repairs.
So let's just boil it all down to this one simple idea. Mitosis, the copier, does 1 division to make 2 identical diploid cells. Meiosis, the shuffler, does 2 divisions to make 4 unique haploid cells. If you remember nothing else, remember that. That's the core difference, right there in a nutshell.
So now that we get the how, let's talk about the why. Why does it matter so much that we have these 2 totally separate processes for life? Well, it all comes down to their different but equally vital roles in the grand scheme of things.
Let's just distill this whole explainer down to 2 essential truths. Mitosis maintains. It makes sure everything is stable, allowing a complex organism to grow and fix itself with perfect genetic copies. On the other hand, meiosis creates. It introduces all that variation, which is the raw material for natural selection and what drives the evolution of all species. You could say one ensures the survival of the individual, while the other ensures the survival of the entire species.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. Sure, mitosis gives us life, but it's meiosis that gives life its incredible, vibrant diversity. Without that constant shuffling of the genetic deck, could complex life have ever adapted, evolved, and flourished the way it has? It's a heck of a question, and it really shows you the amazing power packed into these tiny, elegant cellular dances.